What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Odd Shopper channel. And today we're talking a mega Wednesday college basketball slate. It's January the 24th. It's actually bigger than Super Tuesday, so there's a lot to get into. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all content goes live. We're brought to you by BetMGM. Limited time offer for those of you in all legal states except New York, Puerto Rico, and Nevada. You'll click the link in the video description below. Then you'll make your first deposit at least $5, make a wager at least $5, and you are going to get $158 in the form of bonus bets. It's that easy, and it's going right into your account. You must be 21 years or older to play. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, recapping yesterday quickly. It was a good day, a good turnaround from the 0-3 Monday, I believe it was. Yeah, today's Wednesday. So yesterday turned things around. Unfortunately, my two favorite bets were the ones that lost. That was Kentucky and Wisconsin, just briefly to touch on those a little bit. Both away teams, and for those of you that are going to run into the comments and talk about away teams, go look at how well away teams did yesterday. It just happened to be not the ones that I took. Kentucky, wow, what a disappointing performance. I think a couple things went into this. First of all, South Carolina, they play really slow. They try to just bring you into the mud with them, and they did that against Kentucky. They also had an absolute flamethrower from three yesterday. So, I mean, when teams get hot from three, you'll run into these kind of upsets, but it goes beyond that. South Carolina was getting Kentucky defenders out of position. You know, they were like, Ivicic was getting switched to point guards and extremely athletic dribble drive guards where he was just getting cooked right off the dribble. So they did a fantastic job exploiting some weaknesses in Kentucky's game, and that has been the biggest weakness of Kentucky is just they can outscore you, but they will give up points. So if you end up with like a flamethrower from three, or you play really slow and you create these volatile games, it can be something that Kentucky struggles with, and that happened last week. So I was wrong there. Wisconsin gave up like an 18-point lead to Minnesota. They did not deserve to win the game, let alone cover, which they did not. Aside from that, it was pretty good. We had wins with TCU. Butler had a good win, covered that spread. Both totals we took yesterday covered. Pittsburgh under, Florida State over. Nebraska ended up covering. So it was a good day. Just wanted to touch on Kentucky's lapse there. But we move forward, and before we get started, of course, always shop these lines. That's key too. You know, if you had particular numbers on some of those games, you would have covered versus some other ones. But you can take advantage of all that on Odd Shopper. There's a deal, $14.95 for a week, $49.95 for a month. And it gives you everything, access to all our tools all in one. Our Discord's included in that. I'm in there. Everything that you would love. So let's get started. I'll bring you behind the glass. Last thing, graphic is not updated yet. We're behind on our graphics team. I'm waiting on it. Hopefully soon. Unfortunately, I just don't have an answer for you guys right now. All right, starting this off, we've got Mississippi State taking on Florida. We'll be back in a couple road teams, and that starts here. This is taking some money Mississippi State's direction, and it makes sense. Their best player, Tolu Smith, is back in action. So right now, I still see some trailing fours. Take those if you can get them. I think it's going to go through 3.5 in most places. And first and foremost, this team is just completely different with Tolu Smith on the floor. He's their most efficient player. Those of you that are going to run in the comments and talk about road games, yeah, Mississippi State is 0-3 in road games. You know what those road games were? Georgia Tech, they lost by 8. That was without Tolu Smith. Their second road game was against a South Carolina team that just beat Kentucky. There was a single-digit loss by 6. That was Tolu Smith's second game back. He only played 20 minutes. It was kind of that ramp up into action for Tolu. And their last one was against Kentucky, who people were just anointing a Final Four team prior to their loss yesterday. So this is a very... And those are their only 3 games away from home. They played some neutrals in there. Those don't count as true road games. You don't have the same home court advantage. So all this to say, the road stuff doesn't make a lot of sense to me with Mississippi State. It's not that they can or can't play on the road. It's just that we don't know. They haven't had their best player, and they've only done it 3 times. Anyway, in this matchup, I think there are some things to like, and it starts with Tolu Smith on the interior. They'll be facing a big Florida team, so he is needed. Florida's 5th in effective height. They're 8th in rebounding. Mississippi State is 24th, and that's having Tolu Smith playing about 5 games at this point. So now you're adding your big man back to the fold, and he is the most efficient player on this team. Tolu Smith stands 6'11", and with one of the higher rebounding rates, offensive ratings, he's going to be key to this game because Florida does have a good roster. I think they're a little underrated in the market and have underachieved this year, still a top 40 team per KenPom. And they go about 6 deep. You've got Tyrese Samuel, Walter Clayton, Zion Poulin, Riley Kugel, Will Richards, so a pretty good stable of guards there. But the other thing that Mississippi State is awesome at is just defense in general, and this is everywhere. Where I think you see the best boost is on the interior. They're 102nd overall, but again, Tolu Smith shores that up, and then their guards are elite defenders. 3rd in the country in perimeter defense. Should be able to put these Florida guards in an absolute blender here. And last thing, Mississippi State already had a better effective field goal percentage than Florida. So now that you have the best player returning to the fold, this is one I think we could take advantage of. Getting it at 3.5, 4 is what I'm looking for. All right, next game, we head to Illinois versus Northwestern. This is one that is also a road team I'm backing, and you're seeing money come in on Illinois. It's actually the same exact spread. You can find 4s, you can find 3.5s. It's bounced around a little bit. If you can get an Illinois minus 3.5, I love that. I took the 4 myself, and I have no hesitation doing so. It's a similar parallel to what we just talked about, Mississippi State, Florida. Terrence Shannon Jr. is back. And Terrence Shannon Jr. is a top 5 player in the country per a lot of metrics. Go to evamia.com. An All-American candidate. This is a do-it-all guard for this Illinois team. And that's going to be huge against Northwestern. Yes, they're playing on the road. It's a very short road trip for them playing Northwestern, who doesn't have the best home court. But things to like about Illinois. Even without Terrence Shannon, this team is an absolute flamethrower from 3. And Terrence Shannon shoots 38% from 3 himself. We have Coleman Hawkins at 35%, Justin Harmon at 41%, Luke Goody at 40%. There's just absolute snipers from 3. And then the biggest benefit of Terrence Shannon missing time was how Marcus Damask developed. And he became a scorer from every single level of the floor and a creator with the ball, which is not what I was expecting. And the other benefit to getting Shannon back is you don't have to play Damask out of position anymore. They had to play Damask at the point guard, they don't have a lot of options. And now Terrence Shannon is your true point guard. That allows Damask to move back into the 2 or the 3, wherever you want to play him, depending on your construction, which is huge for this team. And then you look at Northwestern on the other side. They do have lapses in defense. They're only 82nd there overall. On the inside, they're 182nd. Illinois is going to cook them in there. 2-point percentage, Illinois is 38th in the entire country. And getting some of these guys, like getting back Terrence Shannon, should help Illinois from 3. Northwestern's 301st at defending the 3. For as big as Northwestern is, which they actually have pretty good size, they're 274th in rebounding. Illinois is 12th. And again, they didn't have Shannon for 6 games. So I'm just a little confused by this line. As you guys can see on the screen with just some of the basic efficiency metrics, you tell me where Northwestern has a matchup advantage in this game. Yes, they're at home. But man, I make this closer to 5 or 6 points. So the 4 was pretty easy for me. I'm not understanding why we're getting Illinois as only a slight favorite. All right, our next game, we move to Miami taking on Notre Dame. This is another interesting one. In a short spread, we're seeing a lot of these same spreads. Miami's about -4, -4.5 in some spots. It's moved a little bit. And this is the premier buy low spot on Miami that we've seen all year. This team has lost 4 of their last 5 they went to the Final Four last year. They started out the year 11-2, and then again lost 4 of their last 5. That has coincided with a ton of injuries. Nigel Pack has missed some time. Wooga Poplar missed multiple games. They had to play their most recent contest against Syracuse, which they lost by 3, without Norchad Omier, who I think is their most valuable player. You can argue efficiency, stuff like that. But the reason Norchad is their best player, their most valuable player, is his size. This Miami team is not big. He plays the 5, and he's 6'7", and he has an excellent rebounding rate somehow for a player who's undersized. This Miami team is 227th in effective height. Notre Dame is 52nd. So generally speaking, Miami comes into these games with size disadvantages. But the positive here is that Norchad practiced yesterday, so this should not be as big of a matchup advantage for Notre Dame. And I'm not even going to say that it is a matchup advantage because Notre Dame does not use their size effectively. This team is 79th in rebounding. Miami is 92nd in the country. So despite all their disadvantages height-wise, they continue to rebound well. And then somehow Notre Dame is 248th in effective field goal percentage from 2. Like, no, Miami isn't great at defending the 2. They definitely give up points inside. They're really good at defending the 3. But, I mean, Notre Dame can't score inside, even with their height. So, I mean, I'm just perplexed by this line. Notre Dame is 310th in offensive efficiency. Miami's 98th on defense. So, I mean, we just have massive mismatches everywhere for this team. Miami can also shoot the hell out of the balls. It's not just Norchad. They're top 10 in three-point percentage. And, I mean, you want to run down this roster of just absolute snipers. Outside of Norchad, who shoots 32% himself from 3, every one of their starters shoots at least 37%. Matt Cleveland, 39. Nigel Pack, 41. Wooga Poplar, 46. Bensley Joseph, 37. Six-man Kaishan George, 44. I mean, this team is just full of absolute snipers. And Notre Dame's not going to defend that. They don't really defend the 3 as well as they defend the inside. So should be smooth sailing here for Miami. Back in another road team, but no issues with it whatsoever. All right. Next game up, we have Providence taking on Seton Hall. This is one I like, a home team. So those of you road bashers, here you go. You get your home team. Another injury situation. We got a lot of them on this slate. Providence, I don't think, is having the Bryson Hopkins injury fully baked into their spreads yet. Basically, Providence, since they lost him, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games with their lone win coming against DePaul. Now, some of their games were pretty close in that span. They played Seton Hall already. That game, they lost by 4. They were at home. They lost to Creighton and St. John's on the road. Both were single digits, but Creighton by 9, St. John's by 2. And then they got blown out at home by Xavier. Last time out, they beat DePaul by 38, who's barely even a Division I team at this point. So, I mean, how much are we really taking away from this? 4 straight losses, and then you have 1 win against a cupcake team. Meanwhile, Seton Hall, the biggest concern for this team probably is coming off a 3 overtime game. Luckily, they had the extra day of rest. I'm happy they didn't play this game on Tuesday because they did go to triple OT against Creighton. They lost barely 97-94. So you worry about legs maybe in this game, but the extra rest I do think helps. From there, like Providence has been awesome on defense. That is their strength. But I think there's ways that Seton Hall can take advantage of this. First of all, Seton Hall has experienced positive shooting regression. You now have 3 guys shooting at least 35% from 3. Alamir Dawes, Dre Davis, Dylan Dede, Wusu. And that doesn't even factor in Kadari Richmond, who is not a good shooter. But he's one of the best creators in basketball with the ball in his hands. And he creates opportunities because of all the attention he draws. You've actually had big man Jaden Bediako playing better. He's eclipsed 30 minutes in 2 of the last 3 games. I've been somewhat impressed with him as long as he doesn't foul out, which has been a problem in the past. But you look to the Providence side, and I just don't know how this team really puts it together without Hopkins. They forced players like Oduro into more minutes. Ticket Gaines has had to play a ton. They're playing small now. Oduro is basically locked into the 5 at 6'9", and then Ticket Gaines, luckily he's 6'7", but I mean, when he's off the floor, they go down to Rich Barron at the 5, who's 6'5" himself. And Devin Carter's been forced to play every single minute. I'm concerned about the point guard. Like Jaden Pierre's played a ton. They've gotten nothing out of the freshman Garwi Duwall. And in their last matchup, I mean, Kadari's an excellent defender. He's one of the best guards in the country. They put the clamps on Carter. He went, just 4 of 13 from the field, 10 points. Did rebound the hell out of the ball, but man, they absolutely put the clamps on Devin Carter in the last game. I don't know if they're gonna do that again, but man, it's just a very, very difficult matchup for Providence here. I find it hard to believe, but overall, we will be backing Seton Hall in this game. And Providence, I'm sorry you had the injury to Hopkins. It sucks, but is what it is. Next game up, we go to Colorado taking on Washington. Got some pretty good line movement in this one. Colorado's the side. Seeing them anywhere from -2 to -3, I think it's going to go through 3 in a lot of spots. Fine with that number. Another injury situation. This is a team that had been decimated by injuries earlier this year. We've seen them play games without Tristan Da Silva. Julian Hammond has been injured. Now they're almost fully healthy. KJ Simpson's playing well. He's shooting 47% from 3. De Silva himself at 6'9", shooting 37%. Julian Hammond now getting his minutes ramped up at 42. Javon Hadley at 41. Luke O'Brien at 38. Absolute flamethrowers from three. And Cody Williams, 50% on a very limited sample. He's barely played this year. But he's also 6'9", and he gives them a massive boost on the interior, which is needed against Washington. Now we have Colorado 31st in effective height, Washington 45th. I mean, you're going to contend with Keon Brooks and Braxton Mia and all the studs that Washington has on the interior. So getting back Cody Williams, their stud freshman, having Eddie Lampkin, having De Silva, that gives you bodies on the inside that you can actually contend with a Washington team who's been pretty good this year. Aside from that, I'm not sure how Washington scores on the perimeter. You basically are living and dying by Severe Wheeler, who's not having the best year. It's been pretty good. What I say is he's not having the most efficient year. So this team can't shoot threes very well. 144th there. That's where you have to beat Colorado. They're 208th at defending the perimeter. Meanwhile, we already mentioned they're just shooting flamethrowers themselves. Washington, not a good defensive team outside the top 100. They're 125th on the interior, 170th from three. And, I mean, they're seeing a pretty big rebounding difference, and that's crazy considering De Silva's been hurt, Williams has been hurt. Not really sure what to make of it, but they're on the road here. It doesn't bother me. I think this is one Colorado runs away with it. Next one up, we've got Villanova taking on St. John's. Won't lie, this one is not towards the top of the card. Try to kind of order these in terms of preference today. But Nova taking on St. John's, another team who's battled some injuries this year. It seems like they all have at this point. So I guess I should probably just stop saying that. But Justin Moore is back, and he's been playing more minutes, which I think is important to this team. And St. John's, man, they have really been messing with their rotations of late. They actually do have some advantages, and you can see it on paper. Offense, they're better. 33rd versus Nova's 54th. Defense, slightly worse, 35th versus 39th. They actually have a rebounding advantage, 41st to Nova's 69th, which is interesting. And right away, I think the biggest matchup advantages here are going to be Nova and their shooting regression. Like getting Justin Moore back should be huge for this team. You don't really have a great defensive team in St. John's. You have a couple good defenders, which I think are important here. But otherwise, I mean, this Nova team plays very disciplined basketball. They don't generate a lot, or they don't have a lot of turnovers. They force a fair amount themselves. They're a team that draws fouls. St. John's has had a huge issue with fouling in the past. And this St. John's team just can't shoot. They're 297th in three-point attempts per game, 172nd in three-point percentage. On the inside, they're 209th in two-point percentage. They've had some injuries themselves, which is a concern, but this game in a lot of ways reminds me of like a poor man's South Carolina, Kentucky. You have a very slow team in Villanova who's going to slow the pace, grind it out. They're 315th there, and they're going to work through their sound defensive basketball, whereas St. John's, with all the transfers, they play the opposite fast, try to beat you with their athleticism, which can get them in trouble. So, I mean, I see this just being closer to a pick 'em than the spread has it. Something closer to like a -2 in favor of St. John's. I don't think Nova's going to win outright or anything like that, but a bit surprised to see the number where it is. Oh, and last thing, Mark Armstrong has been awesome of late for this team. Like Mark Armstrong emerging, definitely not fully baked into the line. Justin Moore being back, you're kind of seeing a changing of Nova's lineup. Just want to mention that before we move on to the next game. Mark Armstrong, got to give credit. He cost me a cover last weekend by hitting a nonsense half-court three. So, Mark, love you. You've been awesome. Quit shooting nonsense half-quarters that cost me covers. Utah, Washington, one of the last games we'll do here. This game in the Pac-12 is interesting. I bet the road team, and don't feel great about it. It's going to be a little bit tricky in this spot. Money's coming on the other side, but I'm okay with it. And Utah, they've actually kind of experienced some weird injury stuff. This team lost Raleigh Worcester, and they've had to start Devion Smith, who is a transfer. He hasn't played all the games this year, got his waiver cleared. But, man, it's very rare where you see a team start a player, the backup comes in, and they just get an immediate boost, which is insane to see. But it's happened twice for this team. First with Devion Smith. First of all, Smith shooting 42% from three, Raleigh Worcester 27.5. You look at all sorts of offensive creation metrics. Davion Smith is just an absolute baller out there. His assist rate is 10% higher than Raleigh Worcester. This is on a very, very small sample, so take this for what it's worth. Worcester's had a pretty good career, but man, Davion Smith gives you a lot. And I'm also pretty interested in Keba Keta, who's come on and played a lot and played really well. The biggest problem with him is the 6'8" sophomore can't stop fouling. He is averaging 6.7 fouls per 40 minutes. But anyway, this team doesn't play through him anyway. You have Brandon Carlson on the inside, your 7-foot center, who's been an absolute wagon for this team. Gabe Madsen's played well, shooting 45% from three. Cole Badgema shooting 41% from three. That's how this team beats you largely, is shooting over the top of you. And Washington State has not been good at defending it. For as good as they've played recently, and they've had some crazy upsets, I think you're really buying into a Washington State team who's had a couple fluky wins. They're 141st in perimeter defense. And on the interior, that's where they succeed. You're going to be facing one of the most efficient big men in the country in Brandon Carlson. Rebounding-wise, Utah's third in effective height. So like as tall as Washington State is, which they're great on the inside, they're 23rd in effective height and 39th. This is a nightmare matchup. Outside of Utah playing on the road, I find very few reasons to dislike this team in this matchup. All right. This might have been the last one. I got a couple bonuses for you guys. Yeah, last one here. So I didn't break these games down in full, but a couple others I took if you're interested. I took Jacksonville State as a pick'em versus Middle Tennessee and Marshall -3.5 against Georgia State. I was a coward with this Marshall game. Ran my model last night, and the biggest spot where I think the books were wrong in terms of just making a line was Marshall. They're -2, and I just don't know enough about this team. I was a coward, didn't have the heart to bet it. So I moved 1.5 overnight, so I just sprinkled some on Marshall with the model. But yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Leave feedback, of course. Otherwise, if you have questions, I'm on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll be back again tomorrow. But until then, good luck. We'll see you next time.